I never thought I would be left out in the cold by my own daughter. I never imagined that the man she chose to marry would strip me of my dignity at the lowest moment of my life, and that she would stand there and let him. But what they didn't know, what neither of them could have possibly imagined, was that life still had one final card waiting for me to play. And when I finally placed that card on the table, everything changed. So brace yourself, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a reckoning. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. And if stories about family, betrayal, and unexpected justice speak to you, make sure you subscribe. There's more where this came from. My name is Margaret. I'm 58 years old, and until recently, I believed in something called unconditional love. Especially when it came to family. I built my entire life around two people. My husband and our daughter Amanda. Every meal I cooked. Every holiday I hosted. Every dollar I tucked away in savings. Every dream I quietly postponed. It was all for them. When my husband died of cancer last year, it felt like the earth cracked open beneath my feet. We had built our home together in Cedar Park, just north of Austin, from the ground up. I remember hammering nails beside him when we were young, picking paint colors, arguing about kitchen cabinets, laughing when the roof leaked during that first storm. That house wasn't just wood and drywall. It was us. But after he was gone, every room echoed. Every hallway felt haunted. I would wake up at night expecting to hear his footsteps in the kitchen. Grief isn't loud. It's quiet. It sits beside you in the dark. So I sold the house. Too many memories. Too much silence. Amanda and her husband Chad offered me a place to stay, or at least Amanda did. Chad barely looked up from his phone when I carried my boxes inside. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. I tried to be small. That's the only way I can describe it. I kept to the little bedroom in the back. I folded laundry. I cooked dinner. I wiped down counters before anyone asked. I offered to run errands. I paid for groceries when I could. I tried not to exist too loudly. But Chad had this look in his eyes, like I was something stuck between his teeth. It started small. An eye roll when I asked a question. A loud sigh if I sat in the living room too long. The television remote disappearing mid-show. One afternoon, I passed him in the hallway and heard it, barely above a whisper. Freeloader. I stopped walking. For a moment, I convinced myself I imagined it. But deep down, I knew. I would glance at Amanda, hoping she'd step in. Say something. Anything. She never did. He's stressed, she'd tell me. Work's been rough. Don't take it personally. So I swallowed it. Because that's what mothers do, right? We swallow our pride so our children don't have to feel uncomfortable. But that one night, something inside me cracked. I had made chicken pot pie. His favorite. We were sitting at the dinner table. Amanda scrolling through her phone. Chad nursing a beer like always. The silence was thick, almost buzzing. Then he set his fork down. You know, he said casually. Maybe it's time we stop pretending this is temporary. I looked up. He continued. We're not a charity. The words landed heavy. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely steady. He leaned back in his chair. I mean, how long is this supposed to go on? You're not working. You're not contributing. We've got bills. We didn't sign up for extra mouths to feed. My chest tightened so fast I thought I might pass out. I turned to Amanda. Amanda. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe it's best, she whispered, if you find something more stable. For everyone's sake. For everyone's sake. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I stood up quietly, walked to my room and packed 2 suitcases. That was all that remained of my life. The tears didn't come until later. When I stood outside their building, the wind cutting through my coat, and realized I had nowhere to go. Amanda didn't walk me out. Chad didn't pretend to. I sat on the curb for an hour. My phone battery was dead. My heart felt the same. I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to be erased. That night I checked into a motel. The kind where the wallpaper peels. Where the carpet smells faintly of old smoke. Where the vending machine hums louder than your own thoughts. I stared at the ceiling for hours. How does a lifetime of love dissolve so quickly? The next morning I sent Amanda a message. I understand. I love you always. No reply. A week later, another message. Then one on her birthday. Then just a simple heart emoji. Silence. 3 months passed. Each day heavier than the last. I applied for jobs, grocery stores, front desks, diners off the highway. Overqualified. Not the right fit. Polite words for too old. Too inconvenient. Too much history. One night I sat on the motel floor sorting through the only box I brought that wasn't clothes. Old photographs. A few letters. And at the bottom, a small leather-bound book in my mother's diary. I don't remember packing it. But there it was. The leather felt warm in my hands, almost alive. I turned on the dim lamp and opened it. Her handwriting was just as I remembered from the notes she used to slip into my lunchbox. Looped. Neat. Steady. At first, the entries were ordinary. Weather reports. Church gossip. Complaints about grocery prices. Then I saw the date. June. He came again today. Said he wished things were different. That he wished I could be his wife. But he has a family, a business, a name to protect. Margaret will never know. She must never know. I froze. She must never know. I turned the page. More entries. Meetings at hotels. Small envelopes of cash she tried to refuse but sometimes needed. Apologies written in ink. She never wrote his full name. Only initials. Hitches. Then I found the entry that changed everything. February. He said he's made arrangements. If anything ever happens to him, Margaret will have something. A part of what he built. It won't be official. It's too dangerous. But he promised a trust. A letter. He said his lawyer, Mr. Goldstein, would know. Goldstein. The name struck something in me. I had seen it before. It took 2 days of searching on the motel's shared computer. Finally, I found him. Leonard Goldstein. Retired estate lawyer. Still listed under a private firm in Dallas. I didn't call. My hands shook too badly. Instead, I wrote him a letter. A real one. Handwritten. I told him who I was. Told him my mother's name. I didn't accuse. I simply asked for the truth. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. His voice was older than I expected. But when I said my mother's name, it cracked. Not professionally. Personally. He knew her. And in that moment, for the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt seen. And what he told me next was the beginning of everything changing. I always wondered if you'd reach out someday, he said. There's something you need to see. I took a Greyhound to Dallas the next morning. My suitcase was only half packed, just in case he turned out to be a scam artist and I needed to leave fast. But the moment I stepped into that quiet office, walls lined with old books, the air thick with silence older than the furniture, I knew this was real. He handed me a sealed envelope. Yellowed. Fragile. It was from Harold James Sterling, founder of Sterling Energy, one of the biggest oil firms in Central Texas. A man I had seen in newspaper clippings my entire life. A man with a family. A reputation. A legacy. The letter was addressed to my daughter, Margaret Louise. I couldn't read it all at once. I broke before the second paragraph. He admitted everything, the affair, the regret, the silent love. And then the promise. In the event of my death, I have insured a portion of my personal assets, untraceable through my estate, are to be delivered to you via Mr. Goldstein. You are my blood. And though I was too much a coward to claim you in life, I claim you now in death. Mr. Goldstein slid a folder across the table. Bank accounts. A modest investment portfolio. Ownership papers. Titles. Total value. A little over $2 million. I stared at the papers. Then at him. This is real, I whispered. He nodded. It's yours. Always was. My heart thundered, not because of the money, but because for the first time in my life I felt chosen. Seen. I didn't scream. I didn't laugh. I didn't collapse into tears. I just sat there, quiet as a whisper, letting the truth wash over me like long-awaited rain. That night, in my motel room, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling like I had for months. But this time a smile crept across my face. They thought they discarded me. They thought I was done. They had no idea. I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. I didn't go back to Austin right away. Something inside me had shifted permanently. I wasn't just Margaret, the forgotten mother. I was someone new now. Someone who had been lied to her entire life and had finally seen the truth. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't drowning in shame. I was breathing in clarity. I stayed in Dallas a few extra days. I walked through neighborhoods quietly, sat in coffee shops alone, watched people living ordinary lives, people who hadn't been tossed aside like I had. And for the first time, I didn't envy them. I studied them. Who among them wore smiles that masked heartache? Who had been betrayed? Who had clawed their way back from being invisible? Leonard Goldstein hadn't just handed me an inheritance. He had given me time. Time to process. Time to understand what I now held in my hands. It wasn't just wealth. It was power. And I had no idea what to do with it. But grief has a way of turning into fuel when you've been humiliated enough. When I returned to Austin, I didn't go back to the motel. I booked a short-term rental downtown just off South Congress. Clean, modern, quiet. The kind of place Amanda and Chad would never imagine me affording. I began dressing differently. More polished. More deliberate. Not flashy, just invisible in a new way. The kind of invisible that gets you through doors. I started watching YouTube videos on investing, real estate, contracts. I learned the language of business not because I wanted to build an empire, but because I wanted to protect myself. I would never be powerless again. That's when I found it. The listing was buried on a real estate auction site. A multi-unit apartment building in East Austin. A little rundown but structurally sound. The location? The exact complex where Amanda and Chad lived. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The listing read, distressed. Owner defaulting on property taxes. Auction in 2 weeks. I didn't hesitate. With Mr. Goldstein's help, I created an LLC, an anonymous shell company, filed the paperwork, transferred the funds, placed the bid. I wasn't planning revenge. Not exactly. But I was going to take control of the one place they believed they ruled. The auction came and went. I won. Quietly. Legally. Completely under the radar. And just like that, I owned the building where they lived. Where they kicked me out with 2 suitcases and a hollow excuse. Where they humiliated me at my lowest moment. I remember sitting at my desk, looking at the deed, whispering, "Let's see how Chad likes paying rent to a mouth he couldn't feed." A month later, notification letters went out to all tenants. Rents reassessed. Lease terms reviewed. For Chad and Amanda? Triple. Not double. Triple. Market value plus overdue fees. I didn't need to see his reaction. I could feel it. It wasn't about money. It was about pride. Chad was a man who needed control. And I had pulled the rug out from under him, without ever saying a word. 2 days later, Amanda called. The first time since the night I left. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, I don't know if you heard, but something weird's going on. Our rent just shot up a lot. Chad's losing it. I don't know. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. This wasn't vengeance. This was gravity. They needed to feel the weight of their choices. One night I drove past the building. Their lights were on. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Amanda pacing. Chad yelling, his silhouette unmistakable. I watched for a moment. Then I drove away. Part of me felt hollow. Part of me felt vindicated. And part of me still hurt like hell. Because even now, knowing what I knew, holding what I held, I would have given anything to be invited back in. Not to the apartment. To my daughter's heart. But I knew that wasn't possible. Not yet. So I stayed silent. And I waited. I would have given anything to be invited back in. Not to the apartment. To my daughter's heart. But I knew that wasn't possible. Not yet. So I stayed silent. And I waited. Because sometimes the loudest justice is the one that never says a word. And I wasn't finished. 3 weeks after the rent increase, I saw Amanda at the grocery store. She didn't see me. I was 2 aisles over, hidden behind a rack of discounted cereal. She looked tired. Not tired, worn down. Her hair was tied back sloppily, the way she used to wear it when she'd been crying. Her cart was half empty. Rice. Eggs. Off-brand cans. I should have walked away. I didn't. I followed her at a distance, heart pounding like I was committing a crime. She paused in front of a small box of macaroni and cheese. Looked down at her phone. A text from Chad, maybe. Her shoulders sank. She put the box back. That moment broke me. Not because I pitied her, but because I remembered the little girl who used to run to me when she scraped her knee. The one who asked me every night to check for monsters under her bed. And now she was living with one. I drove home and sat on the couch for hours. Life had twisted us into strangers. But this wasn't punishment. It was consequence. And consequence had been long overdue. I had plans now. Not just for the building, but for a quiet, deliberate chess match. Every move calculated. Every step intentional. With the LLC fully operational and the property legally transferred, I began repairs. Small ones first. Leaky pipes. Broken locks. Flickering lights. Chad never noticed. He was too busy firing off furious emails to the property manager, demanding explanations, threatening legal action, unraveling in real time. I knew his ego. He wouldn't move. He'd see that as defeat. And Amanda would follow him. She always did. So I kept going. New signage. Security cameras in the lobby. Upgraded mailboxes. All under my company's name. ML Holdings. Margaret Louise. No one knew. Then came the annual inspection notice mandatory. Chad's response through the tenant portal was explosive. Angry. Self-righteous. Full of hollow threats. I smiled while reading it. He was spiraling. And I hadn't even raised my voice. Meanwhile, I was evolving. New hairstyle. Sharper clothes. Measured steps. I began attending small business meetups under a pseudonym. Learning the rhythms of real estate. Building quiet alliances. No one asked about my past. They saw only a composed woman with sharp eyes and liquidity. The best disguise is the truth you never speak. One morning after a tenant meeting, I passed Amanda and Chad in the parking lot. I kept my sunglasses on, hair in a sleek bun, documents tucked under my arm. Amanda barely glanced at me. Chad didn't recognize me at all. Later that night, I sat in my living room, tea steaming gently between my hands, and thought about how strange it feels to walk past your own child and be invisible. Not because you're weak, but because you've grown into someone they no longer know how to control. They couldn't see me now. They only remembered the version of me they used to manage, the accommodating mother, the grateful guest, the woman who apologized for existing. That woman was gone. Amanda's calls continued. Soft, hesitant, careful. Hi, Mom. Just wanted to see if maybe you had time to talk. I know things have been complicated. I didn't return them. Not out of cruelty, but because she needed to feel the space she created. The absence. The silence. The weight of it. And whenever doubt tried to slip in, I opened my mother's diary. I read the same line over and over. Margaret will never know. She must never know. But I did know now. And with that knowledge came armor. The kind no one could tear through. I was no longer the woman begging to stay under their roof. I was the woman who owned it. I've never believed revenge was about getting even. It's about balance. Justice without flames. A correction, not a war. But when Chad's email came after he received notice of his rent increase, I'll admit it, a small steady flicker of satisfaction lit inside me. Subject. Rent increase. This is absolutely unacceptable. This must be a mistake. Tripling our rent? That's extortion. I demand to speak to whoever owns this dump. We've lived here 3 years and never been late once. This is robbery. Signed, Chad D. Harmon. As if his name carried weight. I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to my property manager with a single line. Please respond using standard clause C regarding market rate adjustments. No special exceptions. Chad wasn't just angry. He was stunned. His arrogance had never allowed for the possibility that someone could outmaneuver him. He was so accustomed to control that the idea of answering to a faceless landlord sent him spiraling. Amanda called again that night. The voicemail had changed. Mom, I know you're not picking up, but I really need to talk. Things are rough right now. Chad's upset. He's taking it out on everything. We're trying to figure things out. I miss you. I do. Her voice cracked. For a moment my thumb hovered over the screen. I could call her back. I could promise to fix it. I could step in and steady the chaos like I always had. But it wasn't okay. And I couldn't keep repairing damage she helped cause. Amanda had stood there while he pushed me out like unpaid debt. Now that the pressure was crushing her, she remembered how to dial my number. No. Let her sit with the silence. The following week, I authorized upgrades to the property. Fresh exterior paint, brighter hallway lighting, landscaping improvements. Chad's increased rent wasn't punishment. It funded progress. Other tenants benefited. He just couldn't see it. Soon angry notes appeared under the office door. Water pressure is terrible. Trash is piling up. If this is what we're paying for, it's a joke. Every complaint went through proper channels. Every response followed policy. No emotion. No exception. Amanda stopped leaving voicemails. She started texting instead. Hey, can we talk? I really need you. Then silence again. Meanwhile, the bank statements from ML Holdings remained steady. Profitable. Quiet. Predictable. The other tenants paid on time. Only Chad made noise. The quarterly report from the building manager arrived with photos attached. Their unit told a different story. Mildew in the bathroom corners. Cracked kitchen tiles. Unopened mail stacked on the floor. They were cutting corners. Living lean. I expected to feel pity. Instead, I felt clarity. This wasn't about rent. It was about power. And Chad was losing it. Word traveled quietly through the building. Extra shifts at work. Doors slamming. Amanda crying on the back steps one afternoon. They were unraveling from the inside out. And I hadn't raised my voice once. That realization stayed with me. For years I had begged to be heard. Begged Amanda to see who Chad truly was. Begged her to recognize what standing beside him was turning her into. Now they were choking on their own silence. And I was watching from above, literally. My new apartment overlooked their courtyard. Different building. Higher floor. Safer neighborhood. A view they could never afford. I didn't watch constantly. Just enough. Enough to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That the betrayal had been real. That consequences weren't cruelty. Still, some nights I sat by the window, phone in hand, staring at Amanda's last message. I really need you. The mother inside me ached. But the woman I had become understood something deeper. This was only the beginning. Heartbreak doesn't always arrive with slammed doors or screaming matches. The real heartbreak is quiet. It's the voicemail you don't return. The message left unread. The silence between you and someone who once called you mommy. The calls stopped eventually. The texts slowed. But the tension inside their apartment grew heavier. Chad began snapping at everyone. Filing unnecessary complaints. Demanding inspections. Looking for someone to blame. Amanda looked exhausted, according to the staff. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't about their suffering. It was about the unbearable truth of watching your daughter choose a cage and call it love. One afternoon, after a noise complaint, my property manager sent a report. Shouting. Something about losing control. This is all your fault. Chad stormed out. Didn't return until morning. Amanda stayed inside all night. Curtains drawn. Lights off. I waited. Not for him. For her. 2 long days passed. Then one evening, just as the sun slipped behind the trees, my intercom buzzed. Hi, this is Amanda Harmon. I was wondering if my mom lives here. My heart stopped. I didn't answer immediately. I watched the screen. Frozen. Then slowly I pressed the door release. 10 minutes later, a soft knock. When I opened the door, she stood there, pale, makeup smudged, shirt wrinkled. She looked like a shadow of the girl I once held, 20 years older than she was. We stared at each other in silence. Hi, Mom. I stepped aside. She walked in carefully, as if unsure she was welcome. The room was quiet except for the gentle clink of teacups as I poured. I didn't ask why she came. I didn't ask how she was. I handed her tea and sat across from her. I don't know where to start, she whispered. I said nothing. Chad's not easy. He's angry all the time. Blames the rent. Blames me. Blames the dog next door. Still I remained quiet. I thought I was doing the right thing when we asked you to leave. She swallowed. Asked as if you had a choice. I just wanted to keep the peace. Chad said you'd never leave unless we pushed you. Her voice trembled. I hate myself for agreeing. I took a slow sip of tea. I miss you, she whispered. But I don't know how to fix this. I studied her face. Every flinch, every line. She was searching for forgiveness but terrified to ask. So I gave her the only thing I could. Silence. Because sometimes silence is safer than truth. We sat that way for nearly an hour. She didn't ask for money. Didn't ask for rescue. She just wanted to sit near me. And I let her. When she finally stood, she reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "For everything." I didn't say it back. I simply held her hand a moment longer than she expected. She let go first. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she walked out. I didn't cry. But when the door clicked shut, I sank into my chair and wrapped my hands around the warmth of her teacup like it was a lifeline. She had come. She had looked me in the eye. And now I knew. The cracks were finally beginning to show. The thing about power, real power, is that you never have to raise your voice to use it. You don't slam doors. You don't shout threats. You don't chase validation. You pull a string here, close a door there, and watch the ones who underestimated you begin to squirm. And Chad was squirming. After Amanda's visit, the atmosphere inside that apartment shifted. Darkened. Tightened. I didn't need surveillance to know it. If you listen closely enough, you can feel when a house starts to unravel. The tension hums through the walls. The maintenance team told me Chad had become erratic, storming into the management office twice a week, demanding to know who owned the building. He wanted names. He wanted a face. He wanted someone to blame. The fact that he didn't have one, that was what made him spiral. He began digging exactly as I knew he would. Chad was not the type to accept defeat quietly. I had seen the way he used to comb through Amanda's phone if she lingered too long at the store. The way he checked her receipts, timed her errands, questioned every delay. Possessive didn't even begin to cover it. So when he started searching for the name behind ML Holdings, I was prepared. He began with the LLC filings. Standard approach. But my attorney had structured everything through a privacy trust. No public names. No direct leads. Just layers of legal insulation. Next came the phishing emails to the property manager, posing as a tenant, casually inquiring about ownership. Sloppy. Transparent. Desperate. Then he called the title office, pretending to represent another property. The clerk flagged the call immediately and reported it back to us. When those avenues failed, he turned inward. I don't know precisely what happened, but one of the neighbors contacted management requesting a wellness check on the Harmons. She reported glass breaking. Raised voices. Not the sharp irritation of unpaid bills, but the volatile sound of fear. The maintenance supervisor went upstairs. No one answered the door, but through it he could hear pacing. Chad muttering. Amanda crying. And then silence. A few days later I received an envelope. No return address. No name on the outside. Inside was a note. I know what you're doing. You think you're clever, but you don't scare me. I'll find out who you are. And when I do, you'll regret it. No signature. He didn't need one. Chad's handwriting was as aggressive as his voice. Heavy strokes, uneven pressure. Words carved into the page as if the paper itself had offended him. I sat with the letter in my hands. My heart pounded, but not from fear. From memory. Carried me back to that kitchen. The moment he looked at me as if I were something beneath his shoes. The way Amanda stood beside him. Not merely silent but aligned. And now he was the one clawing at shadows. Choking on uncertainty. Yelling into emptiness. Poetic, yes. But also dangerous. So I escalated quietly. My attorney coordinated with building security. Additional surveillance was installed, discreet, compliant, routine. Protective measures for all tenants. This building would not fracture because one man couldn't carry the weight of his own cruelty. Amanda didn't call again. But I received updates from the building manager. She had begun walking to work. The car had been sold. Utilities were being reduced. Lights off early. Heat inconsistent. The cracks weren't only in their marriage. They were in their survival. And still I kept my distance. Because this wasn't revenge. It was resolution. Letting Chad's world contract until he felt the smallness he had once imposed on others. Allowing Amanda the space to choose. Remain in the cage. Or reach for the key placed quietly within her reach. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But pressure has a way of forcing clarity. I didn't expect the knock that night. It had been quiet for days. No voicemails. No management updates. No anonymous threats. Just a silence that felt like a storm crouched beyond the horizon. When the knock came soft, deliberate, something tightened in my chest. I opened the door. Amanda stood there, drenched from the rain. A grocery bag clutched to her chest as if it were ballast. Her eyes were swollen. Her mouth opened but no words came. She looked like someone who had run out of language days ago. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, water trailing across the hardwood. I handed her a towel, put the kettle on, poured 2 cups of chamomile tea. She perched on the edge of the couch as though she didn't intend to stay, as though she didn't deserve to. Perhaps she didn't. She stared into her cup. "He's not who I thought he was," she said finally. I remained silent. I knew. Part of me always knew. But I told myself it was stress. That he just needed support. That if I was patient, he'd come around. Still I said nothing. She lifted her eyes, voice trembling. "He thinks someone's targeting us. He's obsessed. He goes through my phone, my emails. Last week he followed me to work. Said he was making sure I wasn't involved." A chill ran through her, not from the cold. "He asked if I was hiding something. If you were hiding something." That caught my breath. "I told him I hadn't spoken to you in weeks. That I didn't even know where you were." She paused. "But that was a lie." Our eyes met for the first time. "I saw your building mentioned in a security notice. Same management company." I connected it. It wasn't hard. Of course it wasn't. Amanda was intelligent. But intelligence does not always equal courage. "I didn't speak," I said quietly. "Not yet," she whispered. "I miss you. But I don't even know how to be around you anymore." My grip tightened around the mug. "You left," she said, voice cracking. "And I let you. I let him push you out." Finally I answered. "No, Amanda. You didn't let him. You stood with him." The truth landed heavily between us. She blinked as if preparing to argue, but there was nothing left to defend. I moved to the window and looked into the night. "I begged for your voice that night," I said. "Just one word. Just one. And you gave me silence." Behind me she exhaled, a quiet fracture. "I didn't think it would get this bad," she said. "I thought I could manage him." "You can't manage a man like that," I replied softly. "You survive him. Or you leave him." We sat in silence. 2 women connected by blood, but not yet by trust. When she stood to leave, she placed the mug down carefully. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just needed to remember what it felt like to be safe." I walked her to the door. She hesitated, then turned suddenly and wrapped her arms around me. First I did not respond. Then I did, but gently, carefully, like someone holding a fragile heirloom that might crumble if gripped too tightly. When she stepped back, she didn't say goodbye. She simply looked at me and left. As the door closed, something shifted inside my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the faintest flicker of something that might one day become it. The invitation was sent the following Tuesday morning. Professional. Understated. Attendance meeting to discuss upcoming building renovations. Common room mandatory attendance. Questions welcome. I knew Chad would come. He wouldn't be able to resist. He wanted a name. A face. A target. He had no idea he would be walking straight into the presence of the woman he once discarded like obsolete machinery. The day of the meeting I arrived early. Charcoal gray blazer. Dark jeans. Minimal jewelry. Hair in soft waves brushing my shoulders. Composed. Polished. Unrecognizable. Nothing about me resembled the woman who once stood in Amanda's kitchen asking for dignity. The common room filled gradually. Tenants filtered in, curious, irritated, indifferent. Then Chad entered. He moved with confrontational energy, shoulders squared, jaw tight. Amanda followed a step behind him, subdued, eyes lowered. He did not scan the room. He did not see me. He approached the property manager directly. "Where is she?" he demanded. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge." The manager remained composed. "All questions will be addressed during the presentation." Chad scoffed. Amanda stared at her shoes. I sat near the back, silent. The presentation began. Routine announcements followed. Upgrades, timelines, the new security system, updated landscaping, improved insulation, practical changes, smart decisions. All funded in part by the very rent Chad had once protested so bitterly. Then the manager paused. We'd like to thank ML Holdings for their commitment to revitalizing the property and prioritizing tenant comfort. The owner is here today. Should anyone have questions? I stood. The room shifted. I walked slowly toward the front, calm, steady. Each step echoed like a quiet drumbeat in my chest. Chad's face twisted first in confusion, then disbelief. Amanda's mouth parted in shock. I turned to the room. Good evening, I said evenly. My name is Margaret. I'm the owner of this building. You could have heard a pin drop. Chad shot to his feet so fast his chair scraped across the floor. You? This is a joke. What kind of game is this? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what he tried so hard to hide. The cracks. The sweat beneath his collar. The puffiness under his eyes. The panic. No game, I said softly. Just business. He stepped forward. You manipulated this. You've been behind this the whole time. You raised our rent. You're trying to ruin us. I didn't move. I gave you a roof. I made improvements. I treated every tenant equally. What I didn't do was forget. He opened his mouth again, but I turned back to the group. If anyone has questions about the changes or improvements, I'll be happy to answer them after the meeting. Thank you. Then I stepped aside. The meeting continued, but the tension clung to the air like static. Chad remained standing, trembling with fury. Amanda sat frozen, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes wide and wet. When it ended, tenants approached me, shaking hands, asking thoughtful questions, thanking me. Some had suspected. Most had no idea. Chad waited until the room emptied. Then he marched toward me. You think you've won? He hissed. This is nothing. You've made an enemy. I met his eyes evenly. No, Chad. I didn't make anything. You did. The day you looked me in the eye and treated me like I didn't matter. Amanda stepped between us. Chad, stop. He turned to her, stunned. What did you just? I said stop, she repeated louder now. She's not your enemy. She never was. You are. He looked at her as if she had struck him, and in a way she had. Amanda turned to me, her voice shaking. I didn't know. I swear. About the building, the money, any of it. I know, I said. Why didn't you tell me? Because you had to see it. Not just hear it. She blinked back, tears. Chad scoffed and stepped away. You two deserve each other. No, I said quietly. She deserves better. And I walked away. For the first time since that awful night in their kitchen, something shifted inside me. Not revenge. Not satisfaction. Power. Quiet. Steady. Entirely mine. For days later, Amanda stood at my door again. This time, she held something in her hands that made my knees nearly buckle the moment I saw it. A book. Faded leather. Torn corner. Spine barely intact. My mother's diary. I opened the door without speaking. She stepped inside slowly, eyes wide, breath unsteady. I found it in my closet, she said. The last time I visited, you must have left it behind. She placed it on the coffee table as though it were sacred. To me it was. I read it, she whispered. My heart stilled. I wasn't trying to pry. I recognized her handwriting. I was just looking for something that made sense. Silence fell between us, heavy and still. I didn't know about Harold Sterling, or the money, or the trust, any of it. I nodded slowly. I didn't know either. Not until I had nothing else to lose. Her voice broke. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were helpless? I held her gaze. For once she didn't look away. Because I was helpless. The truth landed gently but firmly. The night you closed that door on me, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I didn't even have a place to cry without someone knocking and telling me to keep it down. She winced. I found that diary at my lowest point. I was counting coins to eat dinner. I hadn't spoken to anyone in a week. That diary didn't just tell me who I was. It reminded me that I mattered, that my mother loved me, and that she had fought for me silently, even when she couldn't show it. Amanda sat down, hands clenched tightly in her lap. I don't know how I became the kind of daughter who could do what I did. You didn't become her all at once, I said gently. It was small choices. Letting things slide. Choosing peace over truth. Believing love meant loyalty. Even when it hurt. She stood. I left him. The words hit the room like an explosion. He tried to go through my things again. My laptop. My bag. I told him no. He screamed, packed a bag and left. Said he'd be back. I changed the locks the next day. I stared at her. I don't know who I am without him, she admitted. But I'd rather find out than keep disappearing. The silence between us this time felt different. Not heavy. Healing. You didn't deserve what I did, she whispered. I can't fix that. But I want to try. I sat beside her. I used to dream about hearing those words, I said softly. But they don't fix the past. They rewrite it. She looked confused. You see me now, I explained. That changes everything. We sat there for a long time. The kind of silence that mends instead of wounds. Before she left, she paused at the door. You didn't raise me to be weak. I just forgot how strong you were. I smiled gently. No, I said. You didn't forget. You just stopped looking. And now she was finally seeing. When Chad's email arrived, I almost didn't open it. The subject line alone turned my stomach. We need to talk. Now. His words were frantic. Sharp. Desperate. He knew about the building. About the inheritance. About Sterling. He threatened the press. My name. My mother's past. But I wasn't afraid. I had prepared for this moment the day I signed the deed. I forwarded the email to my attorney. By morning, Chad received a cease and desist letter detailing every threatening message, every falsified document submitted under a fake law firm, every tampered email traced to his IP address, tenant complaints, maintenance sabotage logs, audio recordings of his public outbursts. We didn't need criminal charges. One defamation and harassment suit was enough. He panicked. Amanda called 2 days later. He's gone, she said quietly. Packed up while I was at work. Left a note saying he was being hunted. Said you ruined his life. He ruined his own, I replied. He attempted retaliation online. Vague posts implied accusations, but never named names. He couldn't afford to. After the second legal warning, he went silent. Publicly, at least. Privately, I knew he would never forget the day he realized the woman he forced out with 2 suitcases and tired eyes now owned the roof over his head, the lease under his name, and the keys to every locked door he once slammed in mine. Amanda, meanwhile, was transforming. She moved out within a month. Found a small studio near her job. Started therapy. Joined a community art class. And slowly, she began rebuilding the version of herself she had buried under fear. As for me, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need applause. I had something far more powerful. I had peace. And it was finally mine. She painted it for me herself. An abstract phoenix in deep crimsons and brushed gold. Wings rising from shadow into light. I hung it above my fireplace, where the evening sun could catch the metallic strokes and set them glowing like embers. It felt symbolic, though neither of us said that out loud. We spoke more often after that. Not every day. Not the way we used to when conversation was obligation instead of choice. But when we did talk, it was real. Honest. Unvarnished. No careful scripts. No pretending everything was fine. Just truth, sometimes fragile, sometimes uncomfortable, but finally ours. The final piece of the puzzle arrived in a plain envelope. Another letter. This one from Mr. Goldstein. Congratulations, Margaret. The building has officially been transferred. The final tenants have signed new agreements. The lawsuit against Mr. Harmon has been resolved in your favor. You are now free to sell, hold, or restructure as you see fit. I folded the letter carefully and held it to my chest. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about property. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about truth. About reclaiming my name. My story. My strength. The next morning I called a realtor. I was ready to close the last chapter. And open the door to a life I no longer had to survive. I could finally live it. On my terms. I sold the building in late spring. The final paperwork was signed on a bright, cloudless Tuesday. No fanfare. No ceremony. Just the quiet click of a pen, a firm handshake, and the invisible weight of 3 years of grief, betrayal, and silence lifting from my shoulders. The money was wired to my account the next day. But I didn't celebrate. Instead, I wrote a check. A large one. Half of the proceeds went to a local shelter for women and children in crisis, the kind of place I wish I had known existed the night I stood on that curb with 2 suitcases and no one to call. I asked them to build a wing named after my mother, the Ellelaner House. It was my way of honoring the woman who gave me strength in silence, the woman who carried a lifetime of secrets, so that one day I could uncover the truth and become something more than what the world expected me to be. The other half, I used to buy a small house. Nothing extravagant. Just a charming 2-bedroom on the same street where I grew up in Cedar Park. Oak trees stretching across the front yard. A white porch swing. Enough space for quiet. For healing. For growing tomatoes if I ever decided to try. The day I moved in, Amanda helped carry the boxes. She didn't say much. Neither did I. But after we finished unpacking, she sat beside me on the porch swing. Legs tucked under her. Eyes scanning the street as if searching for the girl she used to be. I remember riding my bike here, she said softly. Before everything got complicated. I nodded. You were always safe here, I told her. She swallowed. I forgot how that felt, she whispered. We didn't talk about Chad. We didn't need to. His chapter had closed without a dramatic ending. Just silence. He slipped into a new city, a new job, probably a new lie. But not before signing a non-disclosure agreement and quietly withdrawing his threats. The last thing he wanted was another legal battle. Or worse, the world seeing the truth about him. He was a ghost now. Amanda stayed for dinner. We made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, just like when she was little. She laughed when she burned one side. I laughed when she tried to blame the pan. It was the first real laughter we had shared in years. That night after she left, I stood at the window with a cup of tea cradled in both hands, watching moonlight stretch across the front lawn. And for the first time in a long, long while, I said the words out loud. I forgive you. Not to Amanda. To myself. Because that was the hardest part. Not rising from the ashes. But understanding that I was never the fire they tried to extinguish. I was the spark they underestimated. They taught me that silence was weakness. But I learned how to weaponize it. They tried to erase me, and I became someone they could never forget. I sat down on the couch and opened the diary one last time. Inside, I tucked a note for Amanda to find someday. You don't need their love to be worthy. You don't need their approval to be strong. You only need the truth, and to never ever forget who you are. The clock ticked softly in the background. My tea grew cold in my hands, but my heart, it was finally warm. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to win. I just needed to be who I was all along. And now finally, I was home. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.